I am angry at this evil act by this evil leader attacking an innocent nation, a democratic nation.
He wasn't just threatening Ukraine, that significant enough, but he seemed to be challenging the post-Cold War order.
The mainstream media narrative is self-evident. You could be forgiven for thinking that this conflict began last week. But the timeline leading to this conflict is longer. In the short term, Western states weaponized Ukraine on Russian borders, explaining it as a response to Russian military maneuvers on its own territory.
NATO has started military technical exploration of Ukraine now. It's not possible for us to swallow. You said that there is no space for us to retreat. There is just only a Russian Federation.
Moscow's requests for security guarantees from the US and NATO were numerous. Their concerns seemed reasonable at the very least, halting the military alliance's relentless expansion to Russian borders and the deployment of missile systems and other military infrastructure in the region. The requests fell on deaf ears.
NATO moves its forces to our state borders, while we, strictly fulfilling the agreement, do not react to these actions in any way. I think it's clear that NATO's enlargement process has nothing to do with modernising its alliance or ensuring security in Europe. It is precisely these central concerns of ours that were unfortunately ignored in the responses received on January the 26th from the United States and NATO.
In the absence of the readiness of the American side to agree on firm, legally binding guarantees of ensuring our security by the United States and its allies, Russia will be forced to respond, including through the implementation of military technical measures.
Washington was adamant in its firm support of NATO's open-door policy, even though the apparently defensive alliance was from the very outset aimed against Russia, back then the USSR.
So if Kremlin's aim is to have less NATO on its borders, it will only get more NATO.
This appeared to be a 180-degree turnaround of former agreements. Here's a map of NATO members in 1990 and in 2022. So the promises were broken, not once, not twice, but 14 times. That's how many countries have become NATO members since the 90s. Yet now, NATO and co., cheered on by the mainstream media, pretend like there were no promises at all.
I would like to state once again that neither the 2+4 agreement nor the NATO-Russia Founding Act contained promises to Russia that NATO would not expand to the east. The 2+4 agreement does not mention this issue at all, and any statements to the contrary do not correspond to reality.
Where is that written down? Where is that promise written down?
It's actually right here. The minutes of a March 6, 1991 meeting in Bonn between political directors of the foreign ministries of the US, UK, France and Germany.
We had made it clear during the 2+4 negotiations that we would not extend NATO beyond the Elbe. We could not therefore offer Poland and others membership in NATO.
Is it any surprise then that Moscow has become distrustful? All it wanted was a document with legally binding security guarantees, but it seems that the West was never interested in this. The same way it was never interested in keeping its promises to force Ukraine to implement the Minsk Accords. Kiev pledged decentralizing reforms to provide broad autonomy to the eastern regions that declared independence in 2014. Instead, Kiev launched what it called an anti-terrorist operation in the breakaway republics. The fact that over 14,000 people were killed in the Donbass since 2014 didn't seem to concern or to be noticed by the international community. The West also closed its eyes to the fact that many of the volunteer battalions accompanying the Ukrainian military in their fight against the rebels had nationalist backgrounds. After years of stalemate and suffering, the Donbas republics requested Russia's help in putting an end to what they perceived as Ukrainian military aggression. Russia sees their military operation as a defense of these people. Of course, the Western narrative is one of aggression, despite their own military interventions in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Serbia, to name just a few.
As US outlets cover Russia's attack on Ukraine, remember how these same outlets cover US attacks. When the US bombed Syria in 2017, MSNBC's Brian Williams called the footage of the strike beautiful. He then quoted Leonard Cohen, "I am guided by the beauty of our weapons." CNN's Fareed Zakaria was similarly enthusiastic about Trump's attack on Syria. "I think Donald Trump became president of the United States last night. He talked about international norms, international rules, about America's role in enforcing justice in the world."
All of us, including the Iraqi people, are going to be very fortunate.
I think it was the smartest thing George Bush did.
Why would we intervene in Libya? Because it'd be the right thing to do. Because people are dying for altruistic reasons.
This is, as I say, a consequence of a consistent pattern of violations of international law by us, by the United States, and by NATO. I think that it would have been super easy for the Western powers to accept that the best solution would be to have a declaration of neutrality for Ukraine, and then Ukraine could have the best relations, commercial and otherwise, with the West and with the East. But we have here a problem of an information war in which the level of lying, the level of fake news and fake history and fake law has reached such points that people cannot talk to each other.